Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going through some tips and tricks to fill in your brows if you are someone like me who has more sparse but also coarse and dark brow hairs. This tutorial is for you. I'm going to be walking you through how to do a more combined brow look as well as a more feathered brow look using a brow pen. So if that interests you, keep on watching. Just before we get into the technique for a combo brow, I do want to just clarify that a combination brow uses a combination of ombre and sort of the microblading techniques used to create a laminated brow look. So you could use a pencil, a powder, or even a pomade as your base, and then you're going to go in with a very thin angled brush and a powder to create brow strokes or a brow pen. So the first thing we want to do is sort of map out the shape of our brow. I like to use Anastasia Beverly Hills Golden Ratio. So that is, I like to use a pencil to do this. But that is lining up the pencil with the tip of your nose, and wherever your pencil sort of stops at the beginning of your brow, that's where you're going to put your first mark. You're going to line your pencil up again with the tip of your nose, and this time your pupil, and wherever the pencil lands here is where your arch is going to be. And then for the tail of the brow, you're going to line it up with the end of your nose and the end of your eye, and this is where the end of your brow is going to be. I'm going to be using the L'Oreal Brow Stylist Definer in dark brunette to do this. So for me personally, I like to sort of fill in my brows a little bit higher just because I like to take up a little bit more space on my forehead. You can really use the arch of your brow and the thickness of your brow to sort of draw emphasis towards or away from features of your face. So for me, my brows didn't survive the 90s, and I have no interest really in trying to grow them back because I like to fill in my brows up here where hair would never grow. If you're someone who has less space between the crease and your brow bone to work with eyeshadow, you could fill in your brow a similar way that I'm doing now, and it will take up some space on your forehead as well, but it will allow you more space over here to play with eyeshadow. If you're someone who has a small forehead, you might want to fill in your brows more so underneath the arch to give the appearance of a larger forehead. This again will only work if you have enough space here to play with like I do, but you can use the thickness and the arch to sort of shape your face or sort of draw attention towards or away from features for your own face. It would just take a little bit more, analysis of your features and, what's taking up more space, what could use more space or less space, and you could sort of use your brows to sort of adjust the proportions in this area, which I think is really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in my brows the way I normally do, which is just sort of following the shape we've mapped out, keeping a lot of the arch more at the top here where no hair really grows for me. And I'm using a cool tone pencil to do this. I'll explain why in a minute. Once I'm done sort of laying down the color, I'll just brush it through my brow with a spoolie. This just sort of evens out the color placement a little bit. Now you can see that I have a really nice base for my brow, a nice shape to work with, and I've used a cool tone color to fill this in because when you're filling in your brows, you sort of want your base color to be more of a shadow color. And as you're sort of drawing in hair strokes and, applying gel, you kind of want those colors to be warmer, and you want the gel to maybe be a little bit more shiny or shimmery even, depending on how much hair you have. And this is sort of going to create dimension in your brow rather than keeping it flat like we saw in the 2016 Dip Brow. For the other side, I'm going to be using the Anastasia Brow Powder Duo in medium brown. I'm going to be using the taupe color over there, and I'm also going to be using an angled brush that is quite thick and fluffy. I like to use this kind of brush for the base color because it helps deposit the color in a softer way. It covers more surface area so you get it done quickly. And I also just think it's kind of foolproof. Like, you can't really make a mistake when you're using a fuller brush to do this. So I'm going to follow the same mapping technique that I did with the pencil, but I'm going to do it with the powder. And now I'm just going to go ahead and fill in my brow. And you're going to see that on my brow type, which is sort of thicker, coarse hairs that are more sparse, this is going to still look sparse by the time I'm done applying the base, but it's not going to look sparse when we're done the entire brow. Okay, so now that we have the base of our brows down, I'm going to go in with some brow pens to sort of draw in hair strokes, bring the hairs more forward and make our brows look more full. I advise that you use whatever you have. You don't really need a brow pen. I would just suggest that you use something that sort of has a more like sponge-like applicator. I find that when the applicator has like bristles, it kind of goes all over the place. Your brows look kind of messy, but it doesn't have to be a brow product. It could be an eyeliner that has a similar tone to your brows. I'm going to be using the MAC Shape and Shade brow pencil. You can see that they kind of have the same idea with the foreground and background colors that I was talking about. There's a shader, which honestly I don't think is very user-friendly, but the shader has a much more cool tone color, and then the pens have these much warmer, much softer colors to them. So that's what I'm going to be using to fill in my brows. But again, if you have an eyeliner that matches your brow hair better than any brow product you can find on the market, then go ahead and use that. And with a light hand, I'm just going to start flicking in the hair strokes wherever I need some more fullness. And if you find that your brush at some point in time starts to sort of look a little dry or it starts to skip, just use a setting spray or some sort of spray like MAC Fix Plus or a mix and medium, and you'll be able to get a lot more out of your brow pen. So you could just spray like a tiny bit on your hand, and then you can see that it just sort of rehydrates the product. I also like to follow the way my hairs naturally grow. So although it does look nice to sort of flick upwards and have your brows sort of look nice and fluffy and full, for someone who has a shorter forehead, that's not going to work because it's going to take up more space. And also for someone like me who is doing a brow like this with a much lighter base, it's going to be very obvious that those strokes are not my brow hairs. So I'm going to follow some strokes going downwards like some of my hair actually grows. And that's going to look a lot more natural for me. And now towards the tail, I'm going to start to flick outwards. So that's it for the combo brow on one side. You can see that that's really soft. This would definitely suit someone more with lighter hair. It's not, I mean, it works for me, but I prefer darker brows on me generally. I'm going to go ahead and use the color Stud on the other side, which is a darker color. I think I used the color Spiked on this side. Again, just feathering in the hair strokes wherever they are needed. Now, because I've filled in this brow a lot darker, I can go ahead and flick upwards because you can't really see where my hairs are sort of growing or which direction my hairs are growing on this side. There we go. I've made this one more fluffy. I've brought the hair strokes more upwards and sort of brought them outside of where I drew the base shape. So they look a little thicker, they're more fluffy, and yeah, that's basically what a combo brow looks like on dark hair like mine. The next thing we want to do is set our brows. Obviously, you can use an actual brow product like Brow Freeze, or you could just use a gel. I'm going to age myself a little bit, but way back in the early 2000s, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen had a blog where they suggested to set your brows in place, you just spray the end of a spoolie with a really strong cold hairspray, and I did that for the longest time and it actually worked pretty well. I just put a little bit of gel on my hand right here. I'm going to wait for it to get a little more sticky and tacky, and I'm going to do one of my brows with Brow Freeze just to show you the difference. So I'm going to use Brow Freeze on the side that's lighter because I don't necessarily want something too shiny on this side because all of the sparseness is still sort of showing. So I don't want to draw too much emphasis to it because it's only going to really, if this were a shiny gel, it would only really highlight the hairs I actually have, and all of this would still be matte, and that's going to look a little weird on me personally. For this side, now that the gel's a little bit a little bit firmer, I can go in with the gel and just sort of run it through my brows, flicking upwards. And the shininess of the gel is going to help emphasize some of my hairs here, but it's not going to be very obvious that my brows are more sparse naturally because there's such a dark background color. All right, you guys, so that's it for combo brows. I'm going to remove this brow and just do a more laminated look so you could see the difference between the combo brow and just the laminated look. So I do want to mention some things before I start doing this. The first is that I know online everybody has these sort of laminated looking brows, but that really only works if your brow hairs are fine enough and pliable enough to be able to set very close to your skin and set in a direction that they do not grow. If you have thick and wiry hairs like I do, hairs that grow downwards like I do, you may need to get your brows laminated first in order to achieve the desired result. I just don't want to give anyone the impression that they can achieve a certain look without some sort of treatment first. And the second thing is that you really shouldn't be using a brow pen that gives you the directions to use it on clean, dry skin without any skincare or makeup. There is no reason in 2024 for us to have brow products that don't work over makeup. We have eyeliners that can glide over glitters. You saw me just use this brow pen over a lot of makeup right now and it worked well. There is no reason for us to be skipping our skincare and especially our sunscreen just to put our brows on. I think that if the product needs that sort of setup to work, then it's a product that's performance is way below the bar of what makeup in 2024 can do for us, and we should just move on to something else. Like I said, you could even use an eyeliner. I've used eyeliners, they work great. We don't need to use a brow product that needs to be on clean bare skin in order to work. So I'm just going to go in again with the color Stud, and I'm going to start very carefully this time. I was less careful on this side because there's color placed down already, but very carefully this time I'm going to use very light strokes to sort of start painting in my hair strokes. I think I'm going to skip this section for now because this has a lot of hair. I suspect I will need far less in this section. So there's my base shape down. I'm going to switch back and forth between the cool tone and the warm colors just to kind of create more dimension like we were talking about before, but also because I don't want this looking too dark. There, so you can see my brows look really similar. This one has a little bit more sparseness to it. This one with the sort of background color added looks a lot more full. I do think that there are similar shapes, so it's possible to do the golden ratio with a pen if you choose to. But yeah, that's how I would fill in a more coarse, dark, and sparse brow using a brow pen to get a more fluffy laminated look. I would skip using a gel or a wax first just because I find it really hard to sort of put the pen over top of that. And a lot of the time I think that looks less natural for those of us that have more sparsity in our brows, because you can really see if some brow hairs are laminated to your face and others are just sort of drawn on. You can see the difference unless you're using a lot of hair strokes and really taking your time to fill in your brows with a brow pen and no other product. I'd also do want to note that for those of you that have the lighter hair that liked, the brow that was going on this side at the beginning, you can use a thinner angled brush to use a powder to fill in your brows as well. So I'm just going to take the darker color from the brow powder duo now and just show you on the back of my hand. You just do little strokes like this, varying pressure. This is a very light pressure. And you can see that even though I picked up quite a dark color, if I use a light pressure, I actually get very fine, very light hair strokes. I also do want to mention that these brow products that I'm using stay pretty well. I have cream on my hands right now and, the powder rubs off, but the strokes stay. It's not like we need to go looking for something with like an extreme amount of staying powder, but just to prove the point again that you don't need to have nothing on your face in order for it to work. The pen portion of the MAC brow product is actually staying on very well. And again, if you'd prefer to do this with an eyeliner, you totally can. This is an eyeliner from Tarte, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody because it actually sort of smears quite easily, but you could do the same with an eyeliner to just create little hair strokes as long as it has a sponge type applicator and not a brush one. All right, I'm gonna go apply some pencil to this brow to even them out, and I'll be right back. Okay, you guys, so that's everything. I hope you learned something new today that you could apply to your own brow routine, and hopefully this helps shed some light on sort of products and the process that you need to fill in your brows and have them look more natural, or just achieve your desired result if you prefer a more laminated look. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.